So, welcome again, everyone. Next, I would like to ask Kathy Eggleson up to the podium, and I would like to ask you to join me in giving a round of thank you to Kathy, because this conference would not have happened without her. Kathy, thank you very much.
Welcome to all of you. It's a thrill to have arrived at this day. For the purposes of the overview of the conference, I want to take the title of the conference in two parts. So, for the first part, toward regulation of nanomaterials. From the mining industry to the financial sector, the importance of appropriate regulation to the safety of all who labor and the good of all of society cannot be denied. The regulation of engineered nanomaterials is in its earliest stages, yet research and development is proceeding far more rapidly than the legal, ethical, and regulatory frameworks that support their responsible use. In order for the promise of nanomaterials to be broadly realized, public understanding of what nanomaterials are and acceptance of their associated risks and benefits is essential. This understanding should be supported by data from comprehensive and specific toxicity studies. The results of these studies can facilitate implementation of regulatory restrictions based on empirically demonstrated risk, protecting public safety and the environment while preventing unjustified impediments to progress and innovation. Also necessary for appropriate regulation is a scientifically valid definition of nanotechnology that is suitable for legal and regulatory purposes. According to the NNI, nanomaterials have a size with at least one dimension in the range of approximately 1 to 100 nanometers. While this definition is useful for many purposes, it is not adequate for purposes of regulation or for assessing risks and benefits. For different materials, the size threshold below which unique physical properties are observed varies. Also, other factors such as shape and environmental conditions may impact risk. There is therefore an urgent need to initiate a process resulting in science-based definitions. Questions to be addressed in this process at this conference will include: is a single clear and valid definition of nanomaterials to be used in all sectors necessary and attainable? Should the nano size scale be the predominant or sole basis for regulating nanomaterials under new or existing laws and regulations? Which additional chemical, physical, biological, and other characteristics should be considered in regulating nanomaterials? Should disclosing the presence of nanoparticles be required on commercial and consumer product labels? Should interventions in a human physiology on the nanoscale be regulated as drugs or devices? Are testing methods applied in more traditional guideline toxicity studies appropriate for nanomaterials, or do new toxicity study protocols need to be developed? Finally, is it appropriate to categorize nanomaterials for regulatory purposes, and if so, what should the criteria for categorization be? So the second part of the title of this conference is Conversation between Academia, Industry, Law, and Government. And I think this bears some discussion. This sort of conversation is not easy, even within academia. In my experience with the intellectual development of very young minds, I'm told that the brightest of small children are the ones who see the connections that other people don't see. And I wonder how it is that the brightest and most educated among us are sometimes encouraged to keep disciplinary blinders on and have a telescopic vision almost all of the time. I want to propose that for the good of society, some of us at least some of the time, should take a panoramic view. This goes with the Riley Center's mission of integrating the advancement of science and technology, the adherence to ethical norms that uphold human dignity, and the development of sound policy for the common good. We strive to bring different disciplinary perspectives to the examination of conceptual, ethical, and policy issues related to science and technology. Out of this mission came our collaboration with ND Nano and the outreach that goes well beyond the university. As you heard, the organizing committee for this conference consisted of people from different colleges and from people outside the university. To further reflect on what this conversation will mean at this conference, I want to quote C.P. Snow from The Two Cultures, who was thinking only of a conversation between two types of individuals who have some difficulty. Literary intellectuals at one pole, at the other, scientists, and as the most representative, the physical scientists. Between the two, a gulf of mutual incomprehension. Sometimes, particularly among the young, hostility and dislike, but most of all, a lack of understanding. At each side, there is some of it which is not entirely baseless. It is all destructive. I propose that with Nano, the stakes are too high. We can't afford the destruction of the gulf of mutual incomprehension. In speaking with Jerry the other day about what we expect of a Riley Fellow in an interdisciplinary context, I mentioned to him the skill of building a bridge, and he said, "There aren't very many bridge builders." I think this is unfortunate, and I'm going to ask that for 3 days, each and every one of you be a bridge builder. We have carefully selected each and every speaker of this conference, not only for his or her technical expertise, but for the ability and initiative in reaching out and building bridges. And it can be done. In this very room, there was a conference on beauty that was fully interdisciplinary, and it was kicked off by a mathematician and an astronomer. And the question and answer period was quite interesting. A philosopher in the audience asked the mathematician a question, and it was rather long-winded and full of jargon, and the mathematician and probably half the room did not understand what the questioner was asking. And the mathematician certainly did his best to answer it. But the philosopher did something fantastic. He recognized the gulf of incomprehension and tried to repair it. He said, "To put it crudely, I'm asking, is it subjective or objective?" And half of the room went, now I understand, including the mathematician who could, in fact, answer the question. So I want to encourage that in order to bridge the gulfs of incomprehension that do happen when people from different disciplines and sectors try to talk to each other, that at times we put it crudely, but we don't have to point out the fact that we're putting it crudely. So at that conference, one of the organizers told me, "I knew the conference was a success when," and I was expecting a number, as is very common for universities to like metrics and statistics. And instead what followed was this: "I knew the conference was a success when the professor from Harvard English department changed her talk based on what she learned from the astronomer and the mathematician." So I encourage all of us to learn from one another at this conference. So in that spirit, whether you're a technical person or not, please take in the posters across the hall and ask questions of the people who have their hands in the gloves manipulating the materials. So for today, our committee felt it was extremely important to start out with a common footing, and we will have a set of overview talks on the scientific, legal, societal, and regulatory issues surrounding nanomaterials. Then we will proceed with philosophical perspectives, dinner in the Morris Inn if you're pre-registered, an industry panel in the evening, and then a reception this evening sponsored by the law firm of Baker & Daniels.